Hello, hi there. I am Thekla Petridou, and this is my new YouTube channel in English. The title of my new channel is Thekla Petridou, my name, Psychology and Life. I've been a YouTuber in Greek language for over a decade, and this is my new baby, my new channel in English language. The title of my new channel is Thekla Petridou Psychology and Life. In this video, I will try to explain the title of my channel and introduce myself. I'm a female, cisgender woman. I was born on 4th of May 1975 in Cyprus. Cyprus is a Greek island, although a separate state in the EU. And I am a psychologist. I have studied psychology and I'm a registered psychologist. All my life, as a student at the university, as a young psychologist, as an older psychologist, I've been using channels of communication with the public in Greek language through TV shows, radio shows, articles in popular newspapers and magazines, etc. I am 48 years old and I'll be becoming 49 this May. But I still feel really young and hard, and also really shy about my use of English language. Of course, my mother tongue is Greek, but I should overcome my anxiety and fear of talking publicly in English in order to bring my messages across. In this introductory video, I want to explain to you, my viewers, how I have come to use what I've learned in my studies in psychology and psychotherapy to better my life. The title of the channel is Psychology and Life. The title of this video is Psychology and My Life. So this is gonna be an autobiographical video, which I have come to find really useful when talking like this to my Greek audience. I have found that people can find a sense of connection when they are listening to a psychologist and a therapist to talk about themselves and their own psychological, emotional, and spiritual struggles. How has psychology affected my life, and how has my life affected my choice of becoming a psychologist and a psychoeducator? I use the term psychoeducator in order to describe this function of being a psychologist and talking in public through a YouTube video at this moment about psychological principles and how they can be applied on people's lives to better them. I was born in 1975 in a small Mediterranean island, exactly 9 months after a war. I've had a difficult childhood, even though I wouldn't recognize it at the time. Neuroscience has proven that growth hormone gives to children and adults, because as adults also have a couple of weekly shots of growth hormone in our sleep, growth hormone has been found to give good feelings and feelings of happiness to people. This is why young children might suffer from trauma, but not be able to realize that. I had a difficult childhood. My childhood was so difficult as for me to be diagnosed with early onset Crohn's disease at the age of 4. Of course, I wasn't diagnosed at the age of 4. I was happily diagnosed at the age of 48, 10 months ago, but my medical history has proven that the onset of my Crohn's disease was at the age of 4. So at the age of 4, I developed an autoimmune disease which I've been living with for the last 44 years. New data of genetic science shows that most people carry genes for several serious diseases. Autoimmune diseases could be some of them. In order to bring your genes into action, you need to have trauma, physical trauma and psychological trauma. I've been all my life through trauma. Mostly when my mother was pregnant with me, it was during a war. And war is really scary and really stressful for all people, and especially for a pregnant woman. My childbirth is described by my parents and their doctors as a very difficult childbirth. I came to life under difficult circumstances. My mother's life was threatened after she gave birth to me through a cesarean cut, and it seems as if I had an early onset of difficulties in my life. I am convinced that I went through depression throughout my childhood and teenage years, even though I wasn't diagnosed and I didn't even realize it. My family is a renowned family in the small town where I grew up. I grew up in Paphos. It's a town of 80,000 people, or at least it was 80,000 people living in Paphos at that time, like 50 years ago. And my parents are considered to be pillars of the community. My father is a priest and a school director. He used to be a school director, and my mother also is a very educated woman who used to teach. My family looked really normal, and even a family that was of higher social and economic status. But the truth behind closed doors was different. My family belongs, and my parents still belong, in a cult. That it's not a cult as obvious as some cults are. It's not as if they were members of Scientology. They are members of this cult, that it is presented in Greek and Cypriot society as a religious organization. It's really hard to grow up in a cult environment. Whereas you are taught as growing up that you are different than other people, that you are better than other people, that you and your family know the right way, and you're going to be saved, you're the good Christians and the good citizens, etc. At the same time, I used to receive, from the age of 3 until the age of 14, regular physical beatings from my father and regular emotional and psychological abuse from both my parents. Nagging was, or still is, I don't know, I'm in no contact with them, their love language. All they know is to make fun of you. All they know is to talk to you in a shameful manner. All they know is to make you feel bad about yourself. But that was my reality. And I couldn't realize that I was being emotionally abused. I could really understand that I have been physically abused, but at the time, in the 80s, it wasn't as obvious as it is today that parents are not allowed to physically abuse their children, to beat their children. Throughout my childhood and my teenage years, I was trying to build myself some resilience. In order to build resilience, you really need to use some coping mechanisms. And coping mechanisms can be really helpful when you are actually being traumatized in a young age, but can really sabotage your life when you are an adult. When I was a young child and a teenager, I used limerence as a coping mechanism. The first time I fell in love, it was at the age of 5 when I fell in love with the Prince Charming on the white horse. I have fallen in love many times in my school years, of course without any reciprocation, because Prince Charming was a fictional character. But when I fell in love with some boys at my school because I happened to be straight, and I went and told them that I'm in love with you, I had no response. And this made me feel even worse about myself, and as if having my mother telling me that I'm really ugly, I'm really fat, I'm really not presentable wasn't enough. Bad self-image, low self-esteem, and frustration after frustration. I managed to make a change at the age of 18 when I had to choose what I would study. I spent 3 days of courageous decision making 30 years ago, March 1992 that I put myself through a very difficult situation that in 3 days I chose not to study modern and ancient Greek literature as my parents wanted me, or tried to guide me to study like my mother did, but to change my navigation and apply for the Department of Psychology in Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. At that time, in those 3 days, I found my voice. I went into deep soul searching, and I made the right decision to become a psychologist. I didn't know what psychology was. I wasn't familiar with what a therapist is, but something told me, my gut instinct told me that I should become one. I jokingly say afterwards that because I needed to see a therapist and my family environment were not positive on this, I decided to make myself a therapist, to become a psychologist, to become a therapist. I really feel grateful for my teenage self 30 years ago that took this decision. This decision that changed my life. This decision that gave me my freedom and gave me my physical, emotional, and spiritual health. I studied psychology at the University of Thessaloniki, Greece. I was an excellent student. I never failed a class, and I was really good academically. But because I was an abused child that had no therapy, I started self-sabotaging. First, I self-sabotaged my academic path. I made life choices that deterred me from studying further. I got myself married at the age of 21, and I got myself a teenage mother at the age of 22. Of course, being a teenage mother made me realize, or helped me bust the myth of happy motherhood. Newer psychoneurological research suggests that psychologically, teenage years finish at the age of 26 for women and at the age of 28 for men, because our frontal lobes are still developing until that age. So at the age of 22, when I had my son, my first born, I was still a teenager. Not legally, but psychologically. It was really a matter of years to get a divorce, a nasty divorce. I had my first son at the age of 22. I had my first daughter at the age of 24 to 25. And at the age of 26, I went through a really difficult soul-searching journey. I accepted the fact that I was really unhappy in that premature marriage, that I was losing my energy, I was losing my will to live. So for me, there was no other solution rather than a divorce. So I got myself a nasty divorce at the age of 26. I had another 3 soul-searching days after 9/11. I had been thinking for a couple of years to get a divorce from my first husband, but I wasn't feeling courageous to. I tried to no avail. I remember very vividly myself watching 9/11 on television and going through a 3-day soul-searching, really difficult trip. I had no sleep, no food, just thinking out loud, writing, and trying to make the proper decision. And I decided on the 13th of September 2001 that I would divorce. My final decision was made on the presumption that if the world would come to an end because of 9/11, I would be really unhappy to die have I stayed in that marriage. That was an existential questioning of my life. When you think, what's the purpose of my life? If I die today or if I die tomorrow, would I die happy? This is an existential way of assessing your life. So I went into adulthood unrooted in every possible way. My divorce was nasty. I divorced not only my older children's father, but I divorced my family. I divorced the cult I belonged in, the church I belonged in, and most of my childhood and teenage years and young adulthood friends. At the age of 26, I had to try to learn to live a normal life out of the cult shielded, glass shielded environment. And as if that was not enough, that I wasn't equipped to live in the society, I had my inner critic torturing me. Of course, I didn't know at the time, but I suffered from complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and triggers were everywhere to emotionally dysregulate me. I suffered for 20 years, from the age of 26 until the age of 46, that I went no contact with my parents and some people from the cult environment that I still had in my life. I was being bullied, severely bullied. And gossip was a toxic intervention from the previously friendly environment of the cult I belonged in. So, in the age of 28, another courageous decision that was to move from my hometown to the capital of Cyprus. But, as the Greek poet Konstantinos Kavafis says, wherever you go, your hometown will always follow you. Guilt and self-destruction working against my quest for happiness and serenity in my life. As if that weren't enough, I found myself to be treated by unsuitable therapists, psychologists who knew nothing about emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse, therapists, psychologists who abided to societal power, therapists that ignored my truth because my parents existed as pillars of the community. And these kind of therapists that they really don't have any empathy and they don't do any spiritual and therapeutic work on themselves, they label their clients as crazy if they act outside of social stereotypes and societal norms. At that time, I kept using limerence as an escape mode. we will talk much on this channel about limerence and about love addiction. It was really difficult for me to be able to live alone and be happy. I spent most of my puberty and early adulthood feeling unhappy because I was single. And there is a lot to say about this thing. I wrote 3 books in Greek language about the subject, about how pop culture persuades us that a romantic relationship will be a cure for all our problems. It is not. Growing up, I came into real close contact with mourning and death. At the age of 32, I had a really difficult mourning process to deal with. My cousin was killed in a car accident at the age of 13. And she was a child that many times was hanging around my own children. We spent time together, and I cared for her, and I considered her some type of a child to me. That perplexed mourning gave me all that I needed to start dealing with panic attacks, severe anxiety, and depression. For over 6 years, I was really resistant on taking antidepressive medication. And my then therapist played a crucial role in this. He used to tell me that I shouldn't use any medication, I shouldn't take any antidepressive therapy from a psychiatrist, because as he put it, I had to endure pain and, as I now realize it, be punished for my sins. I told you, I had unsuitable therapists. The antidepressive therapy, the antidepressants, the SSRIs, were a blessing because they removed my symptoms. They removed my panic attacks. They removed my difficulty sleeping, my overeating, and all the accompanying symptoms of someone having a major affective disorder. But even when your symptoms are removed by antidepressive medication, unprocessed trauma will always get in the way. And as I stated earlier, a love relationship, love is not a solution to psychological problems, and love does not heal trauma. Solving your psychological issues, treating your trauma in a therapeutic way, in a psychotherapeutic way, can lead to a fulfilling love relationship. But a love relationship cannot solve your trauma. In 2013, at the age of 38, I came across the term mobbing. Until then, I thought that bullying is limited to a school environment. Mobbing, bullying in a work environment or in a professional environment is really a menace, and I went through that. I started working on understanding the complex mechanisms of bullying in all human relationships, and the paradigm shifting from cluster B personality disorders such as NPT, narcissistic personality disorder, to narcissistic personality types helped me understand all the abuse I went through in my whole life. And the implementation of the term condependency in the psychological and psychotherapeutic context helped me understand why I always got myself into abusive, emotionally, spiritually, narcissistic, abusive relationships. During this route, I came to understand the role of physical health that affects our psychological well-being and vice versa. Having to live with a very serious, life-threatening autoimmune disease like Crohn's disease for over 4 decades without knowing that, and having all the symptoms of physical dysregulation due to Crohn's flare-ups, made me understand how, when your body is not healthy, your emotional well-being is very seriously affected, and when your emotional well-being is affected, when you get traumatized, when you get dysregulated, your health is affected as well. Finally, 2 years ago, at the age of 46, after having educated myself on narcissistic abuse issues and codependency, after writing 2 books on the subject, I decided, finally, to follow my own teachings, which were not teachings of decades, they were teachings of some years. So, in the summer of 2022, I finally went no contact with my parents and toxic relationships in my life. I had to cut off my life, both my parents and some people that I thought to be close friends through childhood. Those were 2 people. 2 people were my parents. The other 2 people were a cousin of mine that I considered to be a friend and another childhood friend. Going no contact with my oppressors helped me regulate my emotional dysregulation and helped me deal with my complex post-traumatic stress disorder. In this channel, we're gonna talk a lot about complex post-traumatic stress disorder and ways of regulating, re-regulating after you get emotionally dysregulated through triggers that you have in your life. And the most obvious triggers are toxic people that you keep having contact with. I was brought up in a religious family. I was brought up to be religious, but throughout my life, I managed to help myself understand the difference between being religious and practicing spirituality. I have come to understand that the spiritual void is worse than the emotional void. I'm really attracted by the existential approach to psychology and existential therapy. And we will talk in this channel about this as well, about spiritual approaches to psychotherapy and existential therapy. My ultimate goal in life and in this channel is to use psychology in order to make my everyday life better and your everyday life better. My goals in life and my goals in this channel is to help myself and help people who follow my work to get to know ourselves, identify our traumas, and work on the distressful dynamics of our relationships. When we come to a point that we are able to avoid psychological, emotional, and spiritual stressors, after we have identified them, worked on them, and worked on our unprocessed trauma, we will be able to live our life to the fullest and we will be able to achieve our goals. I know that I sound like a life coach, but I'm not a life coach. I'm a psychologist and a therapist, and a person that tries to combine their readings, their knowledge of the science of psychology, their knowledge of the latter facts that research has to show on psychology and neuropsychology and neuroscience, and philosophical and spiritual teachings. I am not a spiritual teacher. I am not a philosopher. I'm a living human being. I'm a psychologist that tries to accommodate psychology into a fuller life. I would really appreciate if you liked my video to put a thumbs up, to like it, to share it with your friends on your social media, subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for future videos. I have a very good picture from my Greek YouTube channel that right now it has over 90,000 subscribers and 42 million views, that people are really interested in learning ways to cope with everyday life's problems and with deeper problems, existential problems, spiritual problems, emotional problems, with the use of psychological knowledge and psychoeducation. What I do is not online therapy. What I do is online psychological education. I'm really willing, through this YouTube channel, to transfer to you the knowledge I have acquired through my studies, through my readings, through my personal development journey, through my own psychotherapeutic journey, and through the stories of thousands of people who write to me in Greek about their lives and the way they correlate my own psychoeducational teachings to their lives. My email is listed on this channel. You are free to send me an email. Right now on my Greek YouTube channel, I'm not able to read any more emails because I've received literally hundreds of thousands of emails over the last 12 years that the Greek YouTube channel is operating. If you really want to ask me something, maybe a question that can be a reason for a future video, or send me your story on a limited space. I would say that 500 words or 600 words are optimal. I might make a video reading your letter and commenting it as a psychologist and a psychological educator. I cannot promise to read all the emails, and I cannot promise to answer all the emails. Welcome to my channel. I am Thekla Petridou. Spread the word if you liked what you have just watched, and let's start this journey together in English. My goal is to make this YouTube channel a safe space for people to find necessary and helpful information on how to implement psychological principles on their everyday lives. Psychology and Life is the title of this new YouTube channel, and welcome to it. Bye.